Have you ever stopped in the middle of the day, for no apparent reason, and felt that there is something bigger inside you waiting to be discovered? It's not crazy. It is not an illusion. It is a sign. There's a very specific reason why you've clicked on this video right now. It was not by chance. It wasn't the algorithm. It was something bigger that directed you here. Because what you hear in the next few minutes can completely change the way you see your life, your failures, your delays, and even your pain. You've probably felt too small. You have believed that other people were born with something special that you don't have. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, why doesn't it work for me? He has already stood silently staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, wondering if one day his turn will come. What if I told you that all of this, the waiting, the struggle, the feeling of being lost, is part of a process that is preparing you for something your mind can't even imagine yet? Within you there is a potential that has been placed there by a force that does not err. It's not cheap motivation. It's not a phrase on a wall. It is a truth that psychology confirms, that faith sustains, and that the history of thousands of people proves. The greatest purposes are almost always born within the people who most doubted themselves. Stay until the end. Because what comes next is not for everyone. It's for those who are ready to see what has always been there, waiting to be awakened. The gift you have and can't see. Let me ask you a question that perhaps no one has ever asked you this way. What is the thing you do that people around you stop everything to pay attention to? But that seems so simple to you that you don't even consider it important. It could be the way you listen to someone. It could be the way you organize chaos. It could be the way you explain something complicated in a way that even a child understands. It could be your ability to enter a heavy environment and, without saying anything special, change the energy of the place. You may not even know how to name it, but it exists. It has always existed. And the fact that you can't see it is exactly the problem. Psychology has a name for this: talent blind spot. It is a phenomenon that has been studied for decades that explains why the most gifted people are often the last to recognize their own value. The reason is simple and brutal at the same time. The human brain automatically devalues what comes easily. Our minds have been conditioned since childhood to believe that merit exists only where there is visible effort, apparent sweat, open struggle. If something flows naturally, the brain classifies it as trivial, as if ease were synonymous with insignificance. But that's exactly where the biggest lie you've ever believed about yourself lies. The most powerful gifts that God places on a person rarely come with a price tag. They are not announced. They do not arrive with immediate clarity. They appear wrapped up in everyday life. In the way you deal with people in crisis, in the way you solve what seemed impossible, in your ability to feel what the other is going through before they even open their mouth. They appear so integrated into your personality that you just can't see them as something special. For you, it's just you being you. But it is not. It is a gift, and gifts were given to be used, not buried. Have you ever been the person someone called at 3 in the morning because they were broken and didn't know who else to call? Have you ever been the only one capable of calming a situation that was exploding? Have you ever solved a problem that everyone around you had given up on, and you did it almost without thinking? Have you ever said a seemingly simple thing that completely changed someone's perspective? If so, you need to understand that this is no coincidence. It's not luck. He is not an ordinary personality. This is gift operating. Neuroscience explains the mechanism. When you have a natural ability, your brain creates neural pathways so efficient for that activity that it no longer requires conscious effort. It's like breathing. You don't think about breathing, it simply breathes. And that's precisely why you don't see your gift, because it's become such an organic part of you that it's become invisible. The great psychologist Martin Seligman, after decades of researching what separates accomplished people from people who just survive, came to a conclusion that contradicts everything we have been taught. The happiest and most impactful people are not the ones who have worked their weaknesses to the limit. They are the ones who have identified their natural strengths and built their entire lives around them. In other words, the path to purpose is not to fix what is broken in you. It is to recognize and release what already works in an extraordinary way. Now think with yourself. Imagine that you could ask the 5 people who know you the most, the ones who have seen you up close in your best and worst phases, what they see as special about you. What do you think they would answer? You'll probably hear words that will sound strange, qualities that you never considered as qualities, capabilities that you have always treated as obviousness. And at that moment something will tighten in your chest, because you will realize that you were carrying a treasure and calling it a weight. This is the blind gift. It's what was put inside you before you even chose. The Bible says in Jeremiah 1:5 that before you were formed in the womb, you had already been known and separated. This is not poetry. This is a declaration of origin. You didn't arrive here empty. You arrived loaded with something that the world needs and that only exists in the unique combination that is you. Your gift doesn't need a huge stage to be real. He doesn't need thousands of followers. He doesn't need validation from anyone. He only needs one thing, that you stop minimizing him, that you stop saying, "Oh, anyone does it," because anyone doesn't. You do, your way, with your story, with your brand, and the world is waiting for exactly that. Why does your life feel stuck, and what it really means? It has a feeling that most people carry in silence because they are too embarrassed to admit it out loud. It's that feeling that life is at a standstill, that you wake up every day in the same place, looking at the same problems, waiting for a change that always seems to be one step away from happening, but never really arrives. And all the while you watch the people around you growing, conquering, achieving, and an inner voice begins to whisper the worst things. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe I was born unlucky. Maybe God has forgotten me. If you've ever felt this, you need to listen to what's coming now with all the attention you have. Because what looks like a crash in the overwhelming majority of times is not failure. It is preparation disguised as stagnation. The psychology of human development describes a phenomenon called the growth plateau. It occurs in the phases in which the human being apparently stops advancing. From the outside, it seems that nothing is happening, but inside the organism is in full swing, reorganizing structures, consolidating learning, processing experiences, creating the structural foundation necessary for the next leap. This is what happens to a child before taking their first steps. Weeks of frustrated attempts, falls, imbalances, and suddenly she walks. This is what happens to a tree during the winter. Months with no leaves, no flowers, no apparent fruit, while underground the roots are deepening in preparation for the coming spring. You may be exactly at that stage right now, and confusing preparation with abandonment can be the most costly mistake of your life. The problem is that we live in a culture that idolizes speed, result in 30 days, transformation in a week, overnight success. And when your life doesn't follow that edited, filtered rhythm you see on social media, your mind starts to create narratives that seem logical but are deeply destructive. I'm not good enough. I wasted my time. It's past my time. These narratives have the power to make you give up exactly at the moment when you were closest to the turn, just when the wait was about to bear fruit. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and later created one of the most important lines of modern psychology, discovered something radical about the human being. It is not the intensity of suffering that breaks a person. It is the absence of meaning within suffering. When you can't see purpose in the difficult phase, the weight becomes unbearable. But when you find meaning, even if partial, even if still nebulous, the same phase that once seemed like imprisonment begins to look like a process. Now do an honest exercise with yourself. Mentally take the hardest phases you've ever lived, the ones you thought wouldn't survive, and look at who you are today. What skills emerged there that didn't exist before? What kind of discernment have you developed? What compassion was born in you that could only be born from those who went through that? What level of strength did you discover you had that you didn't know? I know it hurts to remember, but I also know that you will recognize. Those phases produce something real within you, something that doesn't exist in people who have never gone through what you went through. There is a psychological phenomenon called growth dissonance. He describes the specific discomfort of those who no longer fit into the old version of themselves, but still don't see the new version clearly enough to move with confidence. It's a break, a space between who you were and who you are becoming. And in this interval, everything seems suspended, confused, without ground. But this interval has a more beautiful name: transition. And transitions always seem to be a crash for those who don't understand that they are going through one. If your life seems to be at a standstill today, it changes the question you're asking. Instead of, "Why isn't it working?" ask, "What am I being prepared for?" Because God does not paralyze what he has abandoned. He prepares, carefully and accurately, what he has plans to use. And the plans he has for you are bigger than the delay you're experiencing right now might suggest. Deadlock is not the end of the story. It is often the most important chapter of it. The pain that was shaping you, not destroying you. There is something about pain that no one has taught you. And because of that, when it came, and it came, you did what anybody would do. You tried to run away. You tried to anesthetize. You tried to understand. You tried to blame. You tried to survive. And somehow you survived. You are here. But the pain left marks. And these marks, depending on how you interpret them, can be scars of weakness or records of a transformation that you have not yet fully understood. Psychology has a name for what happens to people who go through intensely painful experiences and come out the other side different, not destroyed but expanded. It's called post-traumatic growth. It was documented by researchers Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, and what they found challenged everything that had been known about trauma until then. Most people who had experienced severe loss, serious illness, deep crises, devastating betrayals reported after a period of processing that pain had produced real, measurable growth. Not despite what they experienced. Because of what they experienced, they reported greater clarity about what really matters. Deeper, more authentic relationships, an inner strength that I didn't know existed, a sense of purpose that was previously vague and that after the pain gained clear contours, as if the pain had scraped away superficial layers and revealed something more solid, more true, more permanent inside. This does not mean that the pain is good. It means that it is not wasted. Think of the image of a blacksmith working a sword. Raw metal does not become a weapon simply because it exists. It needs to be heated until it glows, to the point where it looks like it will melt completely. Then he is repeatedly struck on an anvil, then plunged into cold water in a shock that seems brutal. And this process happens not once, but several. Each cycle removes an impurity. Each cycle rearranges the metal molecules into a denser, tougher, more precise structure. You are that metal. And each painful phase of his life was a cycle of forging. The rejection you suffered revealed who you can really trust. The failure that embarrassed you taught you what easy success would never teach. The loss that devastated you showed how much you are capable of loving. And this is not weakness. It is one of the greatest human capacities. The betrayal that broke you gave you a radar that you didn't have. The disease that stopped you forced you to look at things you were ignoring. The financial crisis forced you to discover inner resources that abundance had dormant. Each pain had a function, even if you can't see which one yet. Our mind, as a survival mechanism, associates pain with danger, and danger with destruction. It's automatic. It is neurological. So when the pain comes, the whole system goes into alert mode. This is going to kill me. And then you fight the process. Try to skip the steps. Try to get out faster than the transformation needs. And he ends up getting out of the pain without what it came to bring. Viktor Frankl, from inside a concentration camp, observing people around him who had practically everything taken from them, came to a conclusion that changed psychology. Suffering without meaning is unbearable and destroying, but suffering with meaning, even the most brutal, can be traversed, because meaning gives direction, and direction gives strength. When you can look at your pain and say, not naively but maturely, "This is teaching me something I needed to learn. This is preparing me for something I can't see yet. This is not meant to destroy me, but to reveal me." The pain doesn't go away. It changes its nature. It still weighs, but now it has a purpose, and purpose turns weight into fuel. What you experienced was not in vain. The nights you cried without understanding why. The times you asked God to take away that pain, and it continued. The phases in which you wondered if you were going to resist. All of this was shaping you to a level of life, of impact, of purpose that the version of you before the pain could not sustain. You're still standing, after all. This is not a detail. This is evidence of what has been placed within you. The moment when everything changes, and you still haven't realized you've already begun. There's something curious and almost ironic about turning points in people's lives. Almost no one notices when they're inside them. Real transformation rarely arrives with an announcement. She doesn't ring the bell. It does not send notification. It arrives quietly, disguised as a conversation that seemed ordinary, a book you opened without any specific intention, a crisis that forced you to make a decision you had been putting off for years, a video that appeared on your screen at a moment when you were exactly ready to hear it, even without knowing you were ready, and there's a real, concrete chance that your turning point has already begun. Now, as you read this, behavioral psychology calls this phenomenon a tipping point. It is the instant when a series of small internal changes, which have been happening in silence, invisible even to yourself, reach a critical mass and produce a perceptible external change. It is the principle of water heating. For a long time, the thermometer rises and apparently nothing happens. The water looks the same. And then, to a specific degree, the molecular structure changes completely. The water boils. The state is transformed. You may be 1 degree away from boiling. Malcolm Gladwell, in studying how great transformations happen in people, in social movements, in entire cultures, discovered something that seems simple but has enormous depth. Turning points do not begin with grandiose events. They start with small decisions that carry weight disproportionate to their apparent size. A book read at the right time. A conversation that lasted 10 minutes but changed a perspective forever. A seemingly insignificant choice that redirected an entire trajectory. The turning point is not a spectacular moment. It is a simple moment that carries eternal weight. Now he looks at his own history with honesty. Is there a small moment that, seen from where you are today, you recognize that changed everything? A phrase that someone said in passing, an opportunity that you decided to accept even though you were afraid. A limit that you reached and that deep down forced you to change. A dark night when something inside you broke in a good way, like a door that was stuck and finally gave way. I bet there is that moment, and I bet when it happened, You had no idea what you were getting. This is how the divine process of transformation works. It always has been. Neuroscience adds a fascinating layer to this. The brain begins to create new neural patterns before a person can consciously articulate what is changing. The transformation happens first from within, at the deepest level, before it appears on the surface. You start to be bothered by things that you previously accepted without question. It starts to attract different conversations, different situations, different people. He begins to feel a call that he does not yet know how to name precisely. You begin to make small decisions that seem insignificant, but are silently redirecting your route. These are not accidents. These are signs that something is moving inside you. And now comes the most important part, the one that requires real honesty. What's the next step you know you need to take, and are you putting it off? Not the perfect step. I don't pass it on when everything is resolved. The next step. The one that scares you a little precisely because it's real. It could be starting something that you're afraid you won't finish. It could be ending something you're afraid to let go. It may be a difficult conversation that you are avoiding. It may be simply deciding, really, not just in words, that you believe you were made for more than what you are living now. It can be just that, an internal, silent, but real decision. The moment everything changes doesn't wait for you to be completely ready. It happens when you decide to move, even incomplete, even insecure, even without seeing the whole path. Because when you take the step, God doesn't go ahead opening the way and then call you. He walks together. At the same pace, at the same pace. The turnaround has already begun. What you decide to do now determines whether she continues. The call that only you can answer. We have come to the most important point, the deepest, and probably the most uncomfortable, because it doesn't end with a pretty idea. It ends with a responsibility, and responsibility demands a response. There is a call in your life that no one else in the world can answer. It is not spiritual exaggeration. It is not motivational speech. It is a reality sustained by both faith and the psychology of identity. Each human being carries an absolutely unique combination of experiences, pains, talents, perspectives, stories, and purposes that is not repeated in anyone else on the face of the earth. You are, literally, a unique edition of being human. And single editions have unique missions. The problem is that the call rarely comes with immediate clarity. It does not appear in fiery letters on the ceiling of your room. It appears as a persistent nuisance, like a restlessness that comes back whenever you stop and make silence. Like that constant stubborn feeling that there's something you should be doing and still isn't doing. Like a low voice that resonates in moments of stillness, and that you often run away precisely so as not to hear, because listening means having to respond. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists the world has ever produced, said something that needs to be listened to carefully. When a person does not live their calling, it manifests itself as a symptom, like anxiety with no apparent cause, as a deep existential emptiness, like the unsettling feeling of living someone else's life, doing what is expected, fulfilling the social script, achieving goals that should satisfy but don't. Like waking up every day with the certainty that something is missing without being able to name exactly what. Have you ever felt that emptiness, the specific one? This emptiness is not weakness, it is not ingratitude, it's not a phase. It is an accurate diagnosis. There is something inside you that has not yet been released to the world. And the world, not as a figure of speech, but as a concrete reality, is waiting for it. Think of it this way: if each person has a unique, irreplaceable calling, then every unanswered call is a real gap in the world. There's someone, somewhere, who would need to hear what only you can say, the way only you can say it, with the credibility that only your story gives. There is a problem that only the specific combination of their experiences, their pains, their gifts, is able to solve. There is a person who needs to be reached in a way that only their trajectory makes possible. When you silence your call out of fear, when you put it off out of insecurity, when you compare it to someone else's call and think yours is too small, you're not just hurting yourself. You are depriving other people of something that could only exist through you. This has weight, and this weight needs to be truly felt. Abraham Maslow, by studying what separates people who live a full life from people who just survive, reached the top of the pyramid of human needs and found something surprising. It is not success. It is not recognition. It's not even security. It is self-actualization, the deep, undeniable sense of fulfilling that for which you were placed here. People who reach this level are not necessarily the most talented, the most privileged, or the ones who have had the easiest path. They are the ones who had the courage to respond to the call that lived within them. Courage, not certainty. Courage in the absence of certainty, because the call doesn't wait for you to have everything resolved. He appears in the middle of the mess, in the middle of debts, in the middle of grief, in the middle of doubt, in the middle of the process. And he says, with a clarity that goes beyond reason, it is now, just the way you are, with what you have. Imperfect, incomplete, insecure, but available. And availability is all God needs to work. You don't have to fully understand your calling to start answering it. This is the trap of perfect waiting, waiting to understand everything and only then moving. But clarity does not come before movement. It comes during. The path reveals itself as you walk. The steering becomes sharp as you move forward. Confidence grows as you act. God does not call those who are ready. He prepares those who are willing. And you were called before you were born, equipped throughout your entire life, including and especially for the parts that hurt the most, for the phases that embarrassed you the most, for the moments when you least believed in yourself. And you were placed right here, at that moment, reading these words, for a reason that goes beyond chance. The call that only you can answer is not waiting outside. He has always been inside you, waiting silently for the only moment that matters. The moment you say, yes, I'm ready, the way I am, with what I have, I will.